A billionaire CEO spent her birthday completely alone after everyone she trusted abandoned her. Then the most feared Mafia King in America walked through the door carrying a single white rose, because he had just uncovered a terrifying secret. Someone had tried to kill her 3 years ago, and the traitor was still standing at her side. There are nights that reveal who truly belongs in your life, and then there are nights that expose every beautiful lie you have ever believed. On the evening of her 31st birthday, Victoria Hale looked across a magnificent ballroom filled with flowers, crystal chandeliers, and an elegant dinner prepared for dozens of honored guests. Every chair had a name. Every place setting had been arranged with perfection. Yet the only sound echoing through the luxurious Manhattan penthouse was silence. Success had built her an empire worth billions, but it could not buy a single person willing to celebrate beside her. For the first time in years, the fear she had buried beneath confidence became impossible to ignore. Only 3 years earlier, Victoria Hale had been one of America's most admired billionaire CEOs. Financial magazines praised her fearless leadership, investors competed for meetings with her, and competitors openly admitted that Hale Dynamics was changing the future of advanced logistics technology. She had earned every title through intelligence, discipline, and relentless determination. Then one mysterious evening, while returning from a confidential corporate meeting, her luxury car exploded without warning beneath an overpass during a heavy storm. Investigators called it a tragic mechanical failure, but no convincing explanation was ever found. Victoria survived, yet the explosion permanently damaged her spine, leaving her unable to walk. Overnight, the brilliant woman who once controlled boardrooms around the world became confined to a wheelchair inside the walls of her own luxurious penthouse. The city still admired her achievements, but admiration slowly transformed into sympathy, and sympathy quietly became distance. Invitations stopped arriving. Powerful executives became unusually busy. Former friends discovered new priorities. Every public appearance was followed by media speculation about whether Hale Dynamics could survive under her leadership. Television analysts politely questioned her future, while anonymous insiders claimed the company's board was preparing to replace her. Victoria refused to answer the rumors. She continued leading her company with dignity, hiding every disappointment behind the calm smile that had once inspired thousands of employees. She reminded herself every morning that she was not a victim. Yet even the strongest people grow tired of pretending they never feel lonely. Tonight was supposed to remind everyone that Victoria Hale was still standing, even if she could no longer stand on her own feet. Her assistant had organized an unforgettable birthday celebration weeks in advance. Invitations had been accepted by influential executives, board members, investors, and longtime acquaintances. The grand dining table displayed expensive china, polished silver, glowing candles, and a magnificent birthday cake waiting at its center. Throughout the afternoon, however, cancellation messages began arriving one after another. A family emergency. A delayed international flight. An urgent board meeting. A sudden illness. Every excuse sounded believable on its own, but together they formed a painful pattern. By sunset, every invited guest had canceled. No one came. Victoria remained seated beside the untouched birthday cake, staring at the empty chairs with graceful composure. She thanked the staff for their effort and even smiled to spare them the discomfort of witnessing her heartbreak. Inside, however, every quiet moment became heavier than the last. Her heart pounding echoed louder than the soft piano music filling the ballroom. She wondered whether people had abandoned her because of the wheelchair, because of the rumors surrounding her company, or because power disappeared the moment weakness became visible. The thought settled heavily inside her chest. Perhaps the world only respected success while it looked invincible. Perhaps being alone was now her permanent future. Suddenly, the silence inside the security room broke. One of the surveillance officers noticed a convoy of identical black luxury SUVs entering the private underground entrance of the building. Every monitor displayed the same image. The vehicles stopped with perfect precision, and several highly disciplined security personnel stepped out first. Then the rear passenger door opened. A tall man dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit emerged, carrying nothing except a single white rose. His movements were calm, deliberate, and completely unhurried. Every guard immediately recognized him. Adrian Blackwood. To the public, Adrian was America's most successful billionaire logistics tycoon, a businessman whose corporations controlled international shipping across continents. Hidden from the world, however, he ruled as the undisputed king of the largest mafia empire on the East Coast. Politicians respected him, billionaires negotiated carefully around him, and powerful enemies preferred to whisper his name rather than speak it aloud. More astonishing than his arrival was one undeniable fact. Victoria had never invited him. Without asking permission, Adrian entered the empty ballroom. His eyes briefly scanned the untouched decorations before settling on Victoria sitting quietly beside the birthday cake. Every employee watching through the security camera stood speechless. Adrian walked directly toward her, gently placed the white rose beside her plate, and stepped behind her wheelchair. Leaning close enough for only Victoria to hear, his calm whisper carried unexpected warmth. "You should never have faced this night alone. From this moment forward you are safe. Anyone who stands under my protection becomes mine to protect." Before anyone could understand what was happening, Adrian quietly wheeled Victoria toward the glowing birthday cake while every person watching the security monitors stared in complete disbelief. The morning after Victoria Hale's forgotten birthday, Manhattan woke to a mystery no newspaper could explain. Every major financial outlet ignored the empty celebration and focused on something far more unbelievable. Adrian Blackwood had appeared at a private birthday gathering. The story spread through executive boardrooms faster than stock prices. People who had spent years trying to secure 5 minutes of Adrian's time could hardly believe he had willingly attended a celebration that no one else considered important. Those who understood the hidden world beneath America's polished skyline recognized that such a decision could only mean one thing. Someone inside that penthouse mattered to the most dangerous man on the East Coast. To the public, Adrian Blackwood was nothing more than a billionaire shipping executive whose global logistics companies connected continents through ports, freight terminals, and international trade. His interviews were rare, his lifestyle remained disciplined, and every business magazine described him as a private genius who preferred silence over publicity. Behind that carefully protected image existed another truth that almost nobody dared to speak aloud. Adrian was the king of the largest mafia empire on the East Coast. His influence stretched across legitimate corporations, private security firms, financial institutions, and intelligence networks hidden beneath layers of legal business. His empire survived not because of fear alone, but because every decision followed an uncompromising code. Loyalty was rewarded without limit. Betrayal was never forgiven. Power belonged only to those capable of controlling themselves before controlling others. Adrian's personal rules were equally absolute. He never attended weddings, birthdays, charity galas, political dinners, or celebrity events. Crowds created unnecessary attention, and unnecessary attention created danger. Every public appearance became another opportunity for hidden enemies to study his movements. Because of that, even his closest associates stopped inviting him years ago. Trust was the rarest currency in Adrian's world. Hundreds worked for him, but only a handful truly knew him. He believed promises could be purchased while actions revealed character. That belief had protected both his business empire and his hidden empire through years of silent conflicts that the public never noticed. Victoria could not understand why such a man had chosen to appear on the loneliest night of her life. Every time she looked at Adrian, she found neither arrogance nor sympathy. Instead, she saw quiet respect. He never stared at her wheelchair. He never spoke to her as though she needed saving. He discussed business with the same confidence he would offer any respected executive. That simple equality unsettled her more than compliments ever could. Around Adrian she never felt judged. She simply felt seen. The reason remained buried in Adrian's memory. 7 years earlier, before Victoria became one of America's youngest billionaire CEOs, Adrian's legitimate shipping corporation had faced complete financial collapse. A coalition of rival investors secretly manipulated market prices, spreading false reports that threatened to destroy everything he had built legally. Banks prepared to withdraw support, shareholders panicked, and industry analysts predicted bankruptcy within weeks. During one emergency financial conference, Victoria attended as an independent technology consultant representing another investment group. She noticed irregular trading patterns that everyone else ignored. Instead of exploiting Adrian's weakness for profit, she publicly challenged the false financial reports using verified evidence. Her analysis restored investor confidence, exposed the manipulation, and prevented Adrian's legal corporation from falling into hostile hands. She never asked for recognition, never expected gratitude, and likely forgot the meeting entirely. Adrian never did. From that day onward, Adrian quietly instructed his intelligence division to monitor Hale dynamics whenever unusual financial activity appeared. He never interfered with Victoria's success because she had earned every achievement herself. But whenever unseen investors attempted hostile acquisitions, whenever anonymous consultants spread false rumors, or whenever competitors planned coordinated attacks against her company, invisible obstacles appeared before their plans succeeded. Regulatory investigations surfaced unexpectedly. Investment groups withdrew without explanation. Secret partnerships dissolved overnight. Victoria believed she had been fortunate. Adrian knew better. He had been keeping his promise to repay a debt she never realized existed. Over the following days, Victoria slowly noticed that Adrian's presence carried an unusual sense of calm. Every conversation with him felt measured rather than rushed. He listened before speaking, observed before judging, and respected silence as much as words. For the first time since the explosion, the constant fear living inside her chest eased. Sitting beside Adrian while overlooking the Manhattan skyline, she realized she could finally breathe without carrying the invisible weight of isolation. She felt unexpectedly safe, not because Adrian offered empty reassurances, but because his confidence quietly removed uncertainty from every room he entered. Late that evening, Adrian stepped onto the private balcony overlooking the city while one of his intelligence chiefs approached carrying an encrypted tablet. The veteran operative rarely displayed emotion, yet his expression had become unusually serious. Adrian accepted the device and reviewed several classified files collected over months of investigation. His eyes remained fixed on the final report before slowly lifting toward the dark skyline. The operative lowered his voice to a careful whisper. "Our investigation is complete. Victoria Hale's explosion 3 years ago was carefully planned. It was never an accident." For the first time in years, the calm expression on the Mafia King disappeared, and a silent war began inside his mind. Adrian Blackwood had faced corporate takeovers, political conspiracies, and silent battles that reshaped entire industries, yet nothing unsettled him more than the classified report resting on his desk. Victoria Hale had not survived an unfortunate accident. Someone had carefully designed her downfall years before she ever realized she had become a target. The explosion that stole the use of her legs was only one move in a much larger strategy. Adrian ordered his private intelligence division to reopen every forgotten file connected to that night. Surveillance footage, insurance records, encrypted financial transactions, security schedules, and deleted corporate communications were quietly recovered from archives others believed impossible to access. As every missing piece returned, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Victoria had never been attacked because of personal hatred. She had been marked for elimination because Hale Dynamics possessed revolutionary logistics technology capable of changing the balance of global commerce. Whoever controlled her company would gain extraordinary power over international supply networks worth hundreds of billions. The investigation uncovered another truth far more dangerous than Adrian expected. The conspiracy had not been organized entirely by outside criminals. Someone sitting inside Victoria's own executive board had secretly opened every door necessary for the operation to succeed. Confidential travel routes had been leaked. Security procedures had been quietly altered. Critical maintenance reports had disappeared before the explosion. Every action looked insignificant on its own, yet together they formed a carefully planned betrayal. The mastermind had hidden behind years of corporate loyalty while patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity to remove Victoria from leadership forever. Adrian remained silent as he studied every document. His expression revealed nothing, but everyone inside the room understood that the king had already decided the outcome. Anyone threatening the woman under his protection had unknowingly declared war against his empire. Victoria, however, remained completely unaware of the truth surrounding her life. She still believed the explosion had been an unforgivable twist of fate, nothing more than terrible luck that changed everything in a single evening. She refused to waste energy searching for enemies because she believed none existed. Instead, she devoted every day to rebuilding Hale Dynamics despite constant rumors questioning her leadership. Even when people underestimated her because of the wheelchair, she refused to surrender. She reminded herself repeatedly that she was not a victim. She had lost mobility, not purpose. That quiet determination impressed Adrian more than any victory she had achieved in business. Without revealing his investigation, Adrian expanded the invisible shield surrounding Victoria. Anonymous investors attempting to purchase controlling shares of Hale Dynamics unexpectedly abandoned negotiations after receiving confidential warnings from unknown sources. A consulting firm hired to influence the board suddenly dissolved before signing critical agreements. Suspicious financial transfers disappeared under quiet regulatory reviews initiated through Adrian's legitimate corporate connections. Individuals preparing to approach Victoria with deceptive partnerships simply changed their plans overnight without understanding why every opportunity kept slipping away. Adrian never sought recognition for any of it. Protecting her had become a responsibility rather than a favor. In his mind, she was now part of a promise he intended to keep. No threat would reach her while he still controlled the unseen battlefield. Over the following weeks, Victoria began noticing unusual changes surrounding her company. Hostile investors who had pressured her board suddenly withdrew. Anonymous online attacks vanished without explanation. Unexpected legal disputes resolved themselves before becoming public scandals. Her advisors called the developments fortunate coincidences, but Victoria sensed something deeper was happening beneath the surface. Every growing crisis seemed to disappear moments before reaching her office. Every invisible obstacle cleared itself before she even understood the problem. The strange pattern slowly replaced constant fear with cautious curiosity. Her relationship with Adrian evolved just as quietly. It never relied upon dramatic confessions or obvious romance. Instead, trust grew through consistency. Adrian always arrived exactly when he promised. He listened more than he spoke. He respected her decisions instead of controlling them. During long evenings overlooking the Manhattan skyline, they discussed leadership, responsibility, and the burden of carrying thousands of employees through uncertain times. Whenever self-doubt appeared behind Victoria's composed smile, Adrian answered with calm certainty rather than empty comfort. Somehow, his presence alone allowed her breath to slow. Sitting close beside him no longer felt unfamiliar. It felt unexpectedly safe. One evening, as city lights reflected across the glass walls of the penthouse, Victoria quietly admitted that life had become strangely peaceful since Adrian entered it. Adrian looked toward the skyline before replying in a calm whisper that carried absolute conviction. Peace is never accidental. Someone chooses to stand between you and the storm. Until every hidden threat disappears, your future remains mine to protect. Victoria lowered her eyes, unable to explain why those words settled so deeply inside her heart. She had spent years believing she faced the world alone. Now, for the first time, she wondered if someone had been quietly protecting her long before she ever noticed. At that exact moment, several miles away inside Hale Dynamics headquarters, one of Victoria's most trusted board members locked himself inside his office after everyone else had gone home. Opening an encrypted communication device hidden beneath his desk, he transmitted a single message to an unknown contact. Victoria Hale will attend tomorrow's private charity conference. Her exact location has just been sent. Victoria Hale refused to let a wheelchair become the final sentence of her story. Every morning before sunrise, she positioned herself before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, watching the city awaken beneath a sky painted in shades of silver and gold. 3 years had passed since the explosion changed her life, yet her determination remained untouched. While critics questioned her future and competitors waited for her company to collapse, Victoria continued leading Hale Dynamics with the same sharp mind that had once transformed a small technology firm into a billion-dollar powerhouse. She attended every board meeting, reviewed every international proposal, and personally approved every strategic decision. Employees across the company no longer admired her because she had overcome tragedy. They admired her because she never allowed tragedy to define her. She reminded them through actions rather than speeches that she was not a victim. Every challenge became another opportunity to prove that real power came from resilience, not physical strength. Across every office floor, employees quietly repeated stories about their CEO's unwavering discipline. Young engineers stayed late because Victoria worked even later. Department heads solved impossible deadlines because they refused to disappoint the woman who never surrendered despite carrying burdens no one else could truly understand. Her calm leadership inspired loyalty that could not be purchased with salaries alone. She treated interns with the same respect she offered senior executives and listened to ideas regardless of titles. The culture she built reflected trust instead of fear, excellence instead of arrogance. Hale Dynamics continued growing because its people believed they were building something larger than quarterly profits. They were protecting a vision created by a leader who refused to abandon them even when the world had nearly abandoned her. Watching Victoria lead her company changed Adrian Blackwood in ways he never expected. He had spent his entire life respecting strength measured by strategy, discipline, and absolute control. Yet Victoria possessed another kind of strength that no empire could manufacture. She carried disappointment without becoming bitter, accepted hardship without surrendering hope, and inspired thousands while quietly fighting battles no one could see. Adrian found himself admiring her not because she survived the explosion, but because she refused to let survival become her greatest achievement. Every conversation revealed another layer of intelligence hidden beneath her composed exterior. For the first time in years, the king of the East Coast Empire looked forward to conversations that had nothing to do with business or power. Their connection deepened naturally through work rather than romance. One afternoon, while reviewing financial reports together inside Victoria's private conference room, she noticed several international transactions passing through shell corporations that appeared perfectly legal on the surface. Most executives would have ignored them, but Victoria's remarkable analytical instincts detected unusual timing patterns hidden within the transfers. She calmly pointed out inconsistencies that Adrian's own financial experts had overlooked. Her observations led to an entirely new investigation. As both teams quietly compared intelligence, they uncovered an international criminal network disguising illegal money through advanced logistics technology, offshore investments, and manipulated shipping contracts. The operation stretched across several countries and reached influential figures inside both legitimate business and organized crime. For Adrian, it confirmed that someone was attempting to expand their influence far beyond ordinary corporate corruption. For Victoria, it became undeniable proof that hidden enemies had been operating around her company for years. Together they began assembling evidence with remarkable precision. Adrian contributed intelligence gathered through his private network, while Victoria decoded complex financial structures using her extraordinary understanding of corporate systems. Their strengths complemented one another perfectly. Adrian recognized patterns of criminal organization, while Victoria exposed the economic mechanisms supporting those operations. Every discovery strengthened their mutual respect. Adrian never dismissed her ideas, and Victoria never questioned his quiet determination to protect those under his care. Working side by side, they developed complete confidence in each other's judgment. The growing partnership created something neither of them expected. Whenever uncertainty surrounded them, Victoria instinctively felt safe whenever Adrian stood nearby, while Adrian quietly realized he trusted Victoria with information he had never shared outside his closest circle. Late one afternoon, Victoria accepted an invitation to represent Hale Dynamics at a prestigious Manhattan charity gala supporting technology scholarships for disadvantaged students. The event attracted influential investors, politicians, journalists, and business leaders from around the country. Adrian initially advised additional security after discovering unusual activity surrounding several attendees, but Victoria gently reminded him that allowing fear to dictate every decision meant surrendering long before any battle began. Adrian studied her determined expression before nodding quietly. He respected courage even when it worried him. Before she entered the ballroom, he leaned slightly close and spoke in a calm whisper. "If anything feels wrong, don't hesitate. My people will always reach you first." Victoria smiled softly. "You're beginning to sound like someone who worries." "I don't worry," Adrian replied. "I protect." Several hours later, while guests applauded a fundraising presentation inside the crowded ballroom, the lights briefly flickered. The interruption lasted only seconds, unnoticed by almost everyone attending. When the lights returned, conversations resumed as though nothing unusual had happened. Only Adrian noticed one terrifying detail. Victoria Hale was gone. The moment Victoria disappeared from the charity gala, Adrian Blackwood knew the enemy had crossed a line from which there would be no return. Within minutes, every private airport, shipping terminal, luxury marina, and secure highway connected to his empire fell under silent surveillance. Yet what disturbed Adrian most was not how perfectly the operation had been executed. It was how accurately the kidnappers had predicted Victoria's movements. The information could only have come from someone trusted enough to access both her schedule and Adrian's security precautions. Standing inside his command center as dozens of encrypted reports appeared across digital screens, Adrian realized the impossible had become reality. Betrayal had entered the very heart of his empire. His intelligence division moved without hesitation. Every communication made during the previous 72 hours was analyzed. Financial transfers, encrypted messages, and private meetings were reconstructed minute by minute. One pattern refused to disappear. Damien Voss, Adrian's longtime underboss and one of the few men allowed into his inner circle, had secretly communicated with an international investment consortium already connected to Hale Dynamics' hidden enemies. For 15 years Damien had been the definition of loyalty. He had helped expand Adrian's empire, negotiated impossible alliances, and stood beside him during every corporate conflict. Nobody questioned his devotion because nobody imagined he could be bought. Yet the evidence left no room for doubt. Driven by ambition rather than principle, Damien had quietly sold confidential information regarding Victoria's movements, Adrian's security strategy, and several classified investigations. His greed had endangered the one person Adrian had sworn to protect. Silence settled across the command room. Adrian did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the intelligence reports before closing the final file. Every senior advisor present understood what that silence meant. Their king had accepted the truth. The invisible conflict had become open war. Orders spread through the empire with remarkable precision. Legitimate businesses strengthened internal security. Private intelligence teams expanded surveillance across multiple cities. Trusted allies quietly returned from overseas operations. No panic existed inside Adrian's organization because discipline had always been stronger than fear. Every member understood that the empire had survived greater storms before. The difference now was deeply personal. This battle was no longer about territory or influence. It was about bringing Victoria home before the enemy destroyed everything she represented. Miles away, Victoria sat inside an isolated estate overlooking a quiet coastline. Her captors treated her as valuable leverage rather than an ordinary prisoner. They believed removing her from public view would force Hale dynamics into chaos while pressuring Adrian into abandoning his investigation. They underestimated the woman they had taken. Victoria refused to surrender emotionally. Every conversation, every routine, every visitor became another source of information. She carefully memorized faces, schedules, accents, security patterns, and fragments of overheard discussions. Using nothing more than observation and remarkable patience, she slowly assembled pieces of the criminal network Adrian had been trying to expose. Her wheelchair had become another reason her captors ignored her awareness, never realizing her greatest strength had always been her mind. Inside the estate were several other individuals held for different reasons, including financial witnesses and corporate insiders who had disappeared without explanation. Most had already accepted hopelessness. Victoria quietly refused to let despair spread. During shared meals and brief conversations, she reminded them that survival began with believing tomorrow still existed. She encouraged them to notice details, remember names, and remain mentally strong no matter how uncertain the future appeared. Her calm confidence slowly replaced panic with determination. Even surrounded by uncertainty, she became the emotional center holding strangers together. She was not a victim. She became the reason others believed rescue was still possible. Daily intelligence reports describing Victoria's courage reached Adrian through hidden sources operating inside the estate. Every message strengthened his respect for her. She was not waiting helplessly to be saved. She was actively weakening the enemy from within using intelligence instead of force. Adrian finally understood why she had inspired thousands of employees before the explosion. Her greatest power had never come from wealth or status. It came from the ability to create hope wherever fear tried to take control. The realization settled deeply inside him. Victoria was no longer simply someone he owed a debt. She had become someone whose future mattered beyond obligation. Late that night, Adrian received one final encrypted transmission revealing the precise location of the estate where Victoria was being held. His advisors immediately proposed assembling a carefully coordinated operation using the full strength of the empire. Adrian quietly rejected every suggestion. Looking toward the dark horizon beyond the command center windows, he reached for his coat and secured the intelligence file inside it. One advisor stepped forward in disbelief. "Boss, you're not seriously planning to go alone." Adrian's expression never changed. "If the enemy believes they control this game," he said in a calm whisper, "they've forgotten whose empire they challenged." Without waiting for another word, Adrian crossed the private hangar, entered a single black vehicle, and drove alone toward enemy territory without backup. Adrian Blackwood crossed into enemy territory before dawn with a rescue operation unlike anything his empire had attempted before. Instead of arriving with overwhelming force, he divided his most trusted teams into silent intelligence units that surrounded every possible escape route without drawing attention. Every movement was guided by information Victoria had unknowingly collected from inside the estate. Hidden communication channels confirmed security rotations, surveillance blind spots, and the locations of innocent captives. Adrian understood that rushing blindly would place everyone at greater danger. This mission was never about proving his power. It was about bringing every innocent person home safe. As the first rays of sunlight touched the distant coastline, the king quietly issued one final order. No unnecessary risks. No innocent lives placed in harm's way. Today, every decision would honor the woman who had continued protecting strangers while living as a prisoner herself. Inside the estate, Victoria sensed that something had changed. The guards appeared distracted, hurried conversations echoed through the hallways, and confidential documents disappeared from meeting tables far earlier than usual. She realized the organization was preparing for a rapid evacuation. Waiting helplessly would only strengthen those holding everyone captive. Remaining calm, she quietly encouraged the other captives to follow simple routines she had carefully planned over previous days. They memorized safe gathering points, shared critical observations, and prepared to move together whenever an opportunity appeared. Victoria understood that panic would only create confusion. Leadership demanded clear thinking, especially when fear tempted everyone to surrender hope. When the opportunity finally arrived, Victoria relied on intelligence rather than physical strength. Days earlier she had noticed that the estate's internal communication network depended upon a central scheduling system used to coordinate transportation and private meetings. Using details she had memorized from overheard conversations, she quietly manipulated several routine requests through an unattended administrative terminal left active during the evacuation preparations. Within minutes, different security teams received conflicting instructions directing them toward opposite ends of the property. Confusion spread naturally without anyone realizing the disruption had been carefully planned. Locked passageways remained temporarily unattended, allowing Victoria and the other captives to move safely toward the designated assembly area she had identified long before. Her greatest weapon had never been force. It had always been her extraordinary ability to understand people, patterns, and decisions before others recognized them themselves. Outside, Adrian received confirmation that unexpected movement had begun inside the estate. His advisors expected resistance. Instead, surveillance revealed groups of innocent captives quietly making their way towards safety under Victoria's guidance. Adrian watched through encrypted drone footage as she calmly directed frightened people despite every hardship she had endured herself. His chest tightened with unexpected emotion. She refused to think only of her own freedom. Even now, she was ensuring nobody would be left behind. At that moment, Adrian understood something he had never admitted to anyone, including himself. Respect had quietly become admiration, and admiration had become love. The realization arrived without dramatic words. It simply settled inside his heart with absolute certainty. Moments later, Adrian reached the secure courtyard where Victoria waited beside the final group of rescued captives. Their eyes met across the open space, and for several silent seconds neither needed to speak. Adrian walked toward her with steady confidence before stopping close enough to see the exhaustion hidden beneath her composed smile. Victoria looked at him as though confirming he was truly there. Her breath trembled ever so slightly before she finally allowed herself to relax. Adrian lowered himself beside her wheelchair and gently placed one hand over hers. "I told you I would come," he said softly. Victoria's eyes glistened, but this time they carried relief instead of loneliness. "For the first time," she replied in almost a whisper, "I believe someone truly wants to protect me." Adrian smiled with rare warmth. "Not someone." He paused briefly before finishing. "Mine." The rescued hostages watched in respectful silence as Adrian's soldiers completed the evacuation. Many of them had spent years serving the king without ever witnessing such quiet humanity. Their admiration no longer belonged only to Adrian. It belonged equally to Victoria. She had transformed despair into courage, uncertainty into hope, and strangers into survivors. She became powerful. Not because she defeated others, but because she inspired them to believe in themselves when every reason to surrender stood before them. In that moment, even the most disciplined veterans quietly understood why their king had chosen her. She possessed the heart of a true queen. As rescue vehicles disappeared into the morning horizon, Adrian's encrypted satellite phone vibrated. His expression darkened while reading the incoming message from his intelligence chief. A single declaration had just been broadcast across every hidden criminal network on the East Coast. The rival Mafia King had formally united several powerful syndicates and declared total war against Adrian Blackwood, Victoria Hale, and everyone standing beneath their growing empire. The declaration of war spread through the hidden world before sunrise, reaching private boardrooms, secure communication networks, and forgotten warehouses across New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. Powerful syndicates that had remained neutral for years were suddenly forced to choose a side. Some followed fear. Others followed opportunity. But those who had spent years serving Adrian Blackwood needed no discussion. Their loyalty had never depended on money or influence. It had been earned through years of fairness, discipline, and unwavering leadership. They believed in their king because he never asked anyone to sacrifice what he would not sacrifice himself. Across every city under his influence, trusted captains quietly prepared defensive operations, determined to protect innocent businesses, employees and families before protecting territory. Adrian made one principle absolutely clear. This conflict would never become an excuse to spread suffering. His empire would defend people first and everything else second. While Adrian coordinated his network with remarkable precision, Victoria refused to remain a spectator. She understood that modern battles were no longer won only through influence or intimidation. They were won through information. Sitting inside the secure operations center established beneath Hale Dynamics headquarters, she reviewed thousands of financial transactions connected to shell corporations, offshore trusts, and international shipping companies. Her brilliant understanding of corporate structures allowed her to notice hidden connections no investigator had previously recognized. Every illegal investment, manipulated contract, and fraudulent acquisition gradually formed a complete financial map of the rival organization. Instead of chasing individuals, Victoria targeted the invisible foundation supporting the entire operation. Quietly, she prepared detailed evidence packages for international regulators, banking authorities, and financial crime divisions operating across several countries. The enemy expected confrontation. They never anticipated exposure. Within days, the rival syndicate's financial network began collapsing under the weight of its own deception. Secret accounts were frozen. Illegal assets disappeared beneath coordinated international investigations. Trusted investors abandoned partnerships after realizing they had unknowingly funded criminal operations. Business alliances built over decades dissolved almost overnight. Adrian watched the unfolding events with genuine admiration. Victoria had achieved something impossible without raising a single weapon or creating unnecessary chaos. She had transformed intelligence into the most effective form of power. Every report arriving inside the command center carried the same conclusion. The enemy was losing control because its hidden foundation no longer existed. The final phase required absolute coordination between Adrian's intelligence division and Victoria's financial strategy. While legal authorities dismantled the criminal economy from above, Adrian's trusted captains quietly secured transportation routes, protected legitimate businesses, and evacuated innocent workers caught between competing organizations. Several advisors urged Adrian to seize abandoned territories and expand his empire while the opportunity existed. The proposal promised greater influence than ever before. Adrian listened calmly before rejecting every suggestion. An empire built upon unnecessary suffering deserves to fall, he said quietly. If victory demands abandoning our principles, then we have already lost. His decision surprised even longtime allies. Yet it strengthened their loyalty beyond measure. They followed him because he valued responsibility above ambition. Victoria witnessed those choices firsthand. The man the world feared as an untouchable Mafia King repeatedly chose protection over conquest, stability over revenge, and ordinary lives over greater influence. The realization reshaped everything she once believed about Adrian. She had expected ruthless ambition. Instead, she found remarkable restraint. Employees from Hale Dynamics, rescued captives, business partners, and even former rivals gradually united behind their shared mission to rebuild what corruption had nearly destroyed. Respect for Victoria grew just as quickly. The woman once underestimated because of her wheelchair became the strategist whose intelligence ended an international criminal network. She became powerful. Not through force but through wisdom, courage, and unwavering integrity. To Adrian's people, she was no longer simply an executive. She had become their queen in every way that truly mattered. As the final investigations concluded, major cities slowly returned to normal. Families reopened businesses without fear. Honest companies reclaimed opportunities stolen through corruption. Thousands of employees kept their livelihoods because Victoria and Adrian had chosen justice over personal gain. Standing together on the observation deck overlooking Manhattan, they watched the city lights shimmer across the river in peaceful silence. Neither needed grand declarations to understand how deeply their lives had changed. Adrian stepped close enough for only Victoria to hear him. "You changed far more than my empire," he said in a quiet whisper. Victoria smiled gently. "You reminded me what feeling safe actually means." For a brief moment, the weight of endless responsibility disappeared. Their breath slowed as the city continued moving beneath them, unaware that its future had quietly changed forever. Then Adrian reached into the inner pocket of his coat and removed a small silver evidence case that had remained untouched since the night of Victoria's birthday. Inside rested a damaged watch recovered from the wreckage of her exploded vehicle, along with several classified documents that revealed the complete truth behind the conspiracy. Victoria noticed the seriousness in his expression. What is it? Adrian looked into her eyes, knowing the answer would change everything she believed about the last 3 years. There is something I have hidden from you since the night I arrived with the white rose, he said softly. And after everything we've survived, you deserve to know the truth. Adrian Blackwood crossed into enemy territory before dawn with a rescue operation unlike anything his empire had attempted before. Instead of arriving with overwhelming force, he divided his most trusted teams into silent intelligence units that surrounded every possible escape route without drawing attention. Every movement was guided by information Victoria had unknowingly collected from inside the estate. Hidden communication channels confirmed security rotations, surveillance blind spots, and the locations of innocent captives. Adrian understood that rushing blindly would place everyone at greater danger. This mission was never about proving his power. It was about bringing every innocent person home safe. As the first rays of sunlight touched the distant coastline, the king quietly issued one final order. No unnecessary risks. No innocent lives placed in harm's way. Today, every decision would honor the woman who had continued protecting strangers while living as a prisoner herself. Inside the estate, Victoria sensed that something had changed. The guards appeared distracted, hurried conversations echoed through the hallways, and confidential documents disappeared from meeting tables far earlier than usual. She realized the organization was preparing for a rapid evacuation. Waiting helplessly would only strengthen those holding everyone captive. Remaining calm, she quietly encouraged the other captives to follow simple routines she had carefully planned over previous days. They memorized safe gathering points, shared critical observations, and prepared to move together whenever an opportunity appeared. Victoria understood that panic would only create confusion. Leadership demanded clear thinking, especially when fear tempted everyone to surrender hope. When the opportunity finally arrived, Victoria relied on intelligence rather than physical strength. Days earlier she had noticed that the estate's internal communication network depended upon a central scheduling system used to coordinate transportation and private meetings. Using details she had memorized from overheard conversations, she quietly manipulated several routine requests through an unattended administrative terminal left active during the evacuation preparations. Within minutes, different security teams received conflicting instructions directing them toward opposite ends of the property. Confusion spread naturally without anyone realizing the disruption had been carefully planned. Locked passageways remained temporarily unattended, allowing Victoria and the other captives to move safely toward the designated assembly area she had identified long before. Her greatest weapon had never been force. It had always been her extraordinary ability to understand people, patterns, and decisions before others recognized them themselves. Outside, Adrian received confirmation that unexpected movement had begun inside the estate. His advisors expected resistance. Instead, surveillance revealed groups of innocent captives quietly making their way towards safety under Victoria's guidance. Adrian watched through encrypted drone footage as she calmly directed frightened people despite every hardship she had endured herself. His chest tightened with unexpected emotion. She refused to think only of her own freedom. Even now, she was ensuring nobody would be left behind. At that moment, Adrian understood something he had never admitted to anyone, including himself. Respect had quietly become admiration, and admiration had become love. The realization arrived without dramatic words. It simply settled inside his heart with absolute certainty. Moments later, Adrian reached the secure courtyard where Victoria waited beside the final group of rescued captives. Their eyes met across the open space, and for several silent seconds neither needed to speak. Adrian walked toward her with steady confidence before stopping close enough to see the exhaustion hidden beneath her composed smile. Victoria looked at him as though confirming he was truly there. Her breath trembled ever so slightly before she finally allowed herself to relax. Adrian lowered himself beside her wheelchair and gently placed one hand over hers. "I told you I would come," he said softly. Victoria's eyes glistened, but this time they carried relief instead of loneliness. "For the first time," she replied in almost a whisper, "I believe someone truly wants to protect me." Adrian smiled with rare warmth. "Not someone." He paused briefly before finishing. "Mine." The rescued hostages watched in respectful silence as Adrian's soldiers completed the evacuation. Many of them had spent years serving the king without ever witnessing such quiet humanity. Their admiration no longer belonged only to Adrian. It belonged equally to Victoria. She had transformed despair into courage, uncertainty into hope, and strangers into survivors. She became powerful. Not because she defeated others, but because she inspired them to believe in themselves when every reason to surrender stood before them. In that moment, even the most disciplined veterans quietly understood why their king had chosen her. She possessed the heart of a true queen. As rescue vehicles disappeared into the morning horizon, Adrian's encrypted satellite phone vibrated. His expression darkened while reading the incoming message from his intelligence chief. A single declaration had just been broadcast across every hidden criminal network on the East Coast. The rival Mafia King had formally united several powerful syndicates and declared total war against Adrian Blackwood, Victoria Hale, and everyone standing beneath their growing empire.